Just to get an idea of who I'm talking to, how many of you are working in the GZ? And how many of you are therapists that you see clients on a regular basis? Okay, and of you, how many of you are using some form of e-health that you're satisfied with? Maybe it's not the best, but you're satisfied with it. Okay. Now I have another question for you. Does it feel strange? Does it feel strange that we're here today as adults and as professionals to talk about play, to talk about games? You can raise your hand if it does. It's okay. I know it feels kind of strange for me. I have Tony. I know it feels kind of strange for me, and I'll explain to you why. Well, first of all, I'm a gamer. That means that I've been jumping and sneaking and solving puzzles and, full disclosure, shooting people and all sorts of things for a long, long time. Now, when I moved to Holland about 5 years ago, I thought that that hobby of mine was in the past. It was all over. I was coming here to be a researcher, a scientist. Science is serious. It's not about playing games. So you can imagine sort of my surprise when I saw the advertisement as it came to come to the Nijmegen at the Behavioral Science Institute to study the positive effects of video games. My hobby and my work merged into one. And so here I am standing before all of you talking about games. Strange indeed. Now what I want to do today is I want to talk to you a bit about what inspires us in our work, what inspires myself and my colleagues at the Behavioral Science Institute to investigate the positive effects of video games for mental health. The first thing I want to talk about is the numbers. We already had this question a moment ago about how many people here consider themselves gamers, but I want to phrase it a slightly different way. How many of you have played a video game in the last week? All right, and if I count Candy Crush and Angry Birds and all that stuff, I get some more hands. Okay. And what do you guys think these numbers might be like if I were to ask this to a group of children from the ages of 10 to 17, let's say? How many children do you think would raise their hands and say, I played a video game in the last week? What did you say? 100%. Well, you guys are pretty much on the money. I mean, the research shows that about 97% of adolescents, and if we go back even deeper into childhood, those numbers dip down ever so slightly, are playing video games on a weekly basis. And I can also confirm from our own work, our own research, that these numbers are the same in the Netherlands. So this is one thing that inspires us. This is a social, cultural phenomenon. This is happening. People are playing video games. Not only that, if we add up the numbers, by the time the average child has turned 21, they've spent 10,000 hours playing video games. It's enormous. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, what is it that these people are doing with all this time? And that brings us to our second source of inspiration. I hope everybody can see this painting well, all the way in the back row. This is a painting from Bruegel the Elder, and it's called Children's Games. It depicts about 200 or so children playing about 80 different games. And if we look around, we can see a very interesting diversity in the types of games that they're playing. We can see that some games are social by design. We can see that some games aren't designed to be social, but can be. We can also see some games that are social, but that also involve intergenerational play, play between children of different ages, also role-playing, pretending to be something you're not. And the other thing that's really fascinating about this is the range of emotions that we can detect in this painting. We see joy, but we also see things like fear, hostility, and aggression. So our perspective looks at the video games of today and says, well, all that we have today is a digital playground. This painting is almost 500 years old, and there are no differences between the variety and intensity of these types of emotions and styles of play then that we see today. And what do we know already about the benefits of a playground? What do we already know that it's affording our children in terms of development? Well, one of the things that we know is that games give us the potential to overcome negative feelings, to experience that doubt, and experience that fear, and experience that exposure, and overcome them. And video games do the same. So video games are able to inspire us, taking us on an epic journey. And video games are able to make us be filled with joy at being able to fantastically move through environments. But video games are also able to instill us with fear, sadness. Right? Now, I actually get a lot of cynicism about this last point, about the sadness that games and video games are able to make. So I want to make a quick little side point here. I'm not sure if many people are able to read this so well. But basically, I want to draw your attention to a poll that was given of gamers. This is a video game website where 40,000 people responded to the question, has the death of a video game character impacted you emotionally? And two of the choices, the top two choices, say things like, I've cried out loud many times, or I've cried at least once from playing a video game. What percentage of gamers, so this isn't exactly scientific, but what percentage of people that responded to this do you think admit or confirm that they've cried from playing a video game? 10%? 20%? 30%? Higher? How high do you think? You think almost 90? Oh, I wish I could be so. I wish I could be so optimistic. No, close to almost 50% of people are saying that by playing these digital games, they're being moved to tears. That this is happening. These are real emotions that people are experiencing. So that's one aspect of the digital playground that inspires us in terms of looking at the positive effects of video games. These are experiences that are moving, and these are experiences that arise positive and negative emotions and give children the opportunity to overcome those negative emotions. Another aspect of the digital playground is that when we play, we are being reinforced in terms of our self-deterministic needs. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, what are the three main affordances of play? Well, the first is when you play, especially games that have a richness to them and a complexity to them, it gives us the chance to feel like I'm getting better at something. I'm experiencing a sense of mastery. The more I play, the better I get. This is instilling people with this sense of competence. I can do it. I can get better. What else do games afford us the possibility? Well, games also afford us the possibility to feel autonomous, to feel like I'm making my own choices. It gives us the opportunity to be creative and try out different things that might otherwise not work in other domains. It gives us the opportunity to try out things in environments where failure doesn't have as grave a consequence as in our everyday lives. And finally, as video games become more and more social, we see that games have the potential to bring us together, to make us feel more related. And it's these three exact needs which make for the perfect recipe for a well-developed, well-adjusted adult. Somebody who feels competent, somebody who feels autonomous, and somebody who feels connected to others. I want to talk about one final source of inspiration about games, and that is thinking about games as exemplary teachers. What I mean by that is game designers have actually a very difficult job ahead of them. Like I said, they want to make you feel competent. They want to make you feel like you're accomplishing something. But it's very challenging to keep people motivated and in a space where their level of challenge, their level of skill is constantly being met by the challenge that's in front of them. And game designers have in essence adopted a philosophy of being able to keep people within a flow state, within this perfect state where I'm always being challenged exactly at my capacity. And this has very important parallels to what we think of as the zone of proximal development, training children exactly at their level. So game designers are adopting the exact thing that we need in order to teach people what it is that we want them to learn. And I want to make this really very concrete because And I'm going to do so using an example that I think a decent number of us will at least be familiar with. Because I think it's very possible for these ideas and these inspirations to kind of feel very slippery. So we're going to look at a very old game, Super Mario Brothers. I've got like 3 little clips, and they're going to get interrupted. And I'll try to express how it is that we can see flow being kept alive through game design. So here comes Mario. This is the first few seconds of the game. We know that if Mario would have, instead of landing on top of the little brown guy, he would have died. So the player needs to learn, I need to be able to get around this person somehow, and that's by jumping. The player also knows that his Mario character can jump at least this high. Let's see what happens next. Oh. Well, that's the same thing. Excuse me. So I don't know if you noticed it, but there were 2 successive green pipes of different heights, one getting slightly higher than the next. And on the left, we can see that there's 1 enemy, and on the right, we can see that there's 2 enemies. There's a gradual, step-by-step, hidden, but it's there, incline in showing the player what they're able to accomplish. Let's continue. And finally, the last thing we see is a pit, a hole in the ground. It's possible for Mario to have fallen down and then he would have died, but he continues on. These are all small little segments that the player is being forced to learn until eventually they're able to do something like this. Right, this level of skill doesn't happen automatically. It comes by design. And good game design teaches people how to get better at things secretly. So, to recap, what inspires us about games? First is, it's ubiquitous. Gaming is a social phenomenon. It's here. People are playing it. Better than that, video games afford us a digital playground, a place where a wide variety of emotions, positive and negative, can be experienced, and where we can experience a sense of mastery, competency, autonomy, and relatedness, getting closer to those people in our environment. And finally, good game design principles make games exemplary teachers. I want to conclude by saying that we're all going to spend the rest of the day trying to learn a lot about different types of games, learn a lot about different ways that we can try to use games in our practice and in our everyday lives. And it can be a complex jungle out there. And this is a new step for, I think, a lot of people in this domain. But in the words of Dr. Seuss, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. Wherever you want to go with this idea, I assure you, you can go. Thank you for your attention.